Okay, this is where I start doing a little bit of the shading and highlighting, sometimes at the same time. Normally I would start with whatever I painted first. In other words, normally what I would do is start this process with the violets because that's what I started first. But seeing as I done the violets yesterday, and of course that paint is totally dry, I let her dry with this pink that's still on my plate. It's still kind of wet, so I'm going to jump to that first. Okay, now this is where, now remember, you've got to let that be totally dry. This is where I start layering a little bit. I wet my brush kind of a lot, almost like I was fixing to use watercolors, and I run it into the paint. And even sometimes when I get the paint on the brush, I dip it in water in that basic deep violet, so it makes it lighter by several shades. So you wouldn't believe how many layers I do. And to me, it doesn't matter how long it takes. As long as you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now remember, I want to leave this as dark back in there as I can, okay? A little bit lighter. So see how that shading is starting to take place. See, I just want a little bit. Boop, boop, right across there. See, just a touch. Just a touch here. And if the brush starts feeling like it's trying to drag, redip in the water, a little bit in the white, back into the dark pink, dip it again, and maybe dab it on your towel just a little bit. I use a towel that's just wore out. Starting in the braid. A little bit on the lip. And it really starts coming together after a while, but like I said, it's a long process. I just dipped in white. Okay, the more you're wanting to highlight, the smaller you get. Okay? You could even do this. I've done this before. Just solid white. Put a few highlights in there. But then you need to let that dry. Used to, I like to just leave it solid white, but I've gotten to a stage where just seeing sometimes bright white like that on the paper kind of gets on my nerves for some reason. I don't know why. It didn't used to. But then later, you'll need to come back if you want to. You can just leave that white if you want to. But you can come back over it once that's completely dry and put a real thin. See, that's still too wet. I shouldn't have done that. I'll just leave it like that. But once that completely dried right there, this process right here where I'm dipping my brush in the lighter, watered down shade for this layer, you could come back over those bright white areas just like lightly like that, and it'll make a real nice highlight instead of just leaving it white. And it's like I said, that's just whatever you want to do. Okay, see, that's a little bit darker than what I anticipated, so I need a little bit more white. Remember, I dipped the brush. This area may not be completely dry yet, and that white might be why it's not. capturing the effect that I want it to. And that's okay. It's just like, you'll learn. Oh, see, there we go. Farther away from the body, lighter the highlight. And I don't like it that white. Which I can come back and fix that later anyway. It don't matter. Like I said, you the more you paint, the more practice you get. That's all I can say. Practice, 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 practice. The more you do it, the better you get. The more little tips and stuff that you'll be like, oh no, I don't like doing it that way. I like doing it this way. And that's fine. Everybody develops their own technique once they've been, you know, doing stuff like this for a while. I'm self-taught. Okay, now I'm going to just water down the deep violet. Don't put any white in it. And let me show you how I go back over and do the shadows a little bit. It's just layer by layer. And I jump around too, and that's just the way I do it. Ooh, I got too much water right there. So it'll take that a long time to dry. I'm afraid to touch it because I'll smear it. And the reason I know that is because I've done that before. You learn from your mistakes. And please don't ever get frustrated. That's the worst thing you can do. I mean, when I'm saying frustrated, there's been times that I have gotten so frustrated and couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to. I have actually been 90% finished with the painting, and I got mad because I couldn't do it. Wasn't doing what I wanted it to. That was, you know, a few more years ago. I've grown since then. But I have thrown complete whole paintings away because I couldn't get one area. And that is so stupid. That was so stupid for me to do that. I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have fixed that if I would have just had a little bit more patience and not got so frustrated. So always remember that. It'll come to you. The more you practice, it's not going to come to you overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's not going to come to you overnight. It takes practice. Some people, it takes years and years for them to develop their own technique. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. As long as you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Okay. I'm just going to keep doing that. And that does take me a while. So I'll come back when I am fixing to start those violets. Okay, now for the violets. Do a little bit of highlighting.
I get that dioxazine purple, or excuse me, no, that's what it's called. Yeah. Lighten it up several shades with the white. Dip the brush. Kind of make it like watercolor almost. Dab it a little bit on your towel, or paper towel, or whatever you use. Okay, I need it a little bit lighter. Ooh, that might be too light. When I get it too light, I just use my finger. Tone that down a little. That's better. I kind of follow the shape of it too. Do the highlights a little first. See? And I know that probably looks blue on your screen, but it's really purple. And to make these show up a little bit, I kind of want it really light right here on the edge. I may just use solid white, but then I'll probably go back over it with the purple. Okay, now I'll be doing all the violets like that, and then I'll come back. Okay, now I have some clean water, and I am going to get out my low Cornell watercolor, hard watercolor palette, I guess is what you call it. And I'm going to get some of the darker colors, and I'm going to put in a few more shadows, and I'm going to be working on the skin. I just think it adds a nice touch. To really bring out the color. And a lot of this just comes with practice and, you know, messing around with it. Don't ever be afraid to, you know, try something. And this painting is totally dry because there's actually been 24 hours since I've been able to work on this. Now I'm dipping in just a little bit of white acrylic paint because I want this side a little bit lighter.